Hello and welcome to the next Lukozer retro game review video. And for this one it is Feud for Commodore Amiga, which was released in 1987. It says here by Bulldog, but I did have this game and this version of it back in the day. It was released by Mastertronic on the actual Mastertronic label. So let's get a game underway. Now unfortunately there is a bit of a problem with the emulated version. It must be the emulator, because I've tried like 4 or 5 different versions and they all have the same problem, which is that there is no in-game audio, which is, to put it mildly, a pain in the arse, but we'll persevere. So, I mean, if you've seen my review of the Commodore 64 version, you will know what the game is about, but I guess I should explain it. You play Leoric, and you are engaged in a feud against your brother, who is Leonoric, who is dressed in red. And you have to walk around the area and collect the various herbs and plants and whatever, which you combine to make spells, which you use to attack Leonoric. And he is doing exactly the same. He's going around collecting everything with the intention of trying to kill you. There is one of the plants I need for the invisible spell, and that is the idea of the game. Now if you're already familiar with the Commodore 64 version, or you've seen my review of it, you will know that the Commodore 64 version is very badly bugged, to the point where it is pretty much unplayable. Now this version, well, apart from the sound on the emulation, doesn't have any bugs, but it does have some issues. Now, the majority of the game is played in total silence, so you know, the lack of the sounds working in the game is not as terrible as it could have been. And indeed, the sparseness of the sound effects in game don't really help the generating any kind of atmosphere. What also doesn't help is that while I do quite like the graphics, and they are a big improvement over the Commodore 64 version, they are almost a little too detailed, and it is a bit difficult to see some of the plants that you have to collect. For example, there is a plant on this screen that I need to pick up, and it's here. There you go, cudweed. If I approach it from the top there, you can see it, but I mean, if you're not looking very closely, you could very easily walk straight past it and have no idea that it's there. And there are a sizable number of plants that have this issue. So finding the plants that you need is needlessly rather tricky. What also doesn't help is with the game being flick screen, and as you've just seen there, if you approach an area and you know, there's an obstacle there, it stops you from being able to go in that direction, but you can't see why. And the really ridiculous thing about that is that while the game is flick screen, I need to go back up again. I want to pick up that plant. So I've got to go all the way around here. But anyway, while the game is flick screen, the entire level is loaded into memory. So much so that if you find yourself in a position, that flash means that Leonoric has just cast a spell, by the way. But say you find yourself in a position like so, if you press space, it centralises it again. So the entire level is in memory. So why not make it scroll? Why make it flick screen? Now, okay, the original games were flick screen as well, but and it just doesn't look right. I mean, and these bridges are compared again to the Commodore 64 version, and bearing in mind this is a 1987 game, you walk across the bridge and the perspective just does not work, because you start in the middle of the bridge where you have to, because if you're too low it acts like a barrier, you can't cross it, but then you're making your way across and suddenly you are right on the very edge of it, and then you're back in the middle towards the other side again. So that rather ruins the sense of perspective. So the plants are difficult to find, and the flick screen makes it awkward to get around the actual landscape. Then the next problem you probably already realised by now. You are absolutely crawling along. It is so slow. And to get from one side of the screen to the other just takes so fucking long. On the 64 version, you're travelling around at quite a rate. And that way, you're not spending ages doing pretty much nothing. But in this version, no. You're just crawling along at a fucking snail's pace. And your brother, and incidentally his approximate location is always highlighted on the compass, you can see he's west of me here. When he's off screen he does seem to move around the area a hell of a lot faster than you do, but when he's on screen suddenly he goes back to travelling at the same rate as you, i.e. fucking slowly. And this extremely slow rate at which you move is made even worse by the fact that once you've collected all of the plants, you can't do anything with them straight away. You have to return to your cauldron, which is where I was at the very start of the game, and mix the spells there before you can use them. So once you've found as many of the plants as you either need or can find, you've got to go all the way back to the start, crawling along at a fucking snail's pace. There's another one there, swift. So yeah, all the way back to the start. And then you've got to go and find the cunt that you're trying to take out. It's just so fucking slow. And when I first played this game, the first version I played was the Spectrum version. I thought it was great. And when I got the Commodore 64 version, okay, the music drove me around the bend. I do actually like the far more sedate and serene version of the theme in this in the Amiga version here, but yeah, while the Commodore 64 version the music drove you around the bend and of course the bugs ruined it, you moved around pretty quickly, so it was actually somewhat enjoyable, and it would have been a great game if the bugs weren't there to render it unplayable. But this version, okay, there's no bugs, but it's just so slow. There's my brother's cauldron. You can't use it, so I don't think I've got any spells ready to be cast. Doesn't look like it, no. But even if I did, you can't use that cauldron. You've got to return to your own one. Now there is one spell that you can use called a teleport spell, and obviously that takes you straight back to where you need to go, straight back to your cauldron. But of course you've got to prepare the spell first of all. Teleport spell is one of the few spells that you can use over and over and over again. Most spells though only last for a short amount of time, and in order to cast them again you've got to find the plants again, and then you've got to go back to the cauldron and mix the spells again. And it gets extremely repetitive and extremely tedious. Now this area, there are a lot of plants in here, but there is also somebody who is helping Leonoric, and if he catches you in here he fires fireballs at you. Thankfully a lot of the time he's not actually in here. And it looks like this is one of those times again. Did I pick that? No. Okay, so I think we're almost done in here, and there's no sign of the bloke who fires the fireballs. He usually hangs around pretty close by though, and there's his hut with his cauldron nearby as well. I think that is it there. Yeah, so his name is Heiki. Whatever that is. So, I mean, let's get on with the review then. Graphically, I do think the graphics are really nice for a 1987 Amiga game. And particularly as this was a Mastertronic release, so it was a budget title. It was 10 quid. Although, 10 quid in 87, you could buy a full price Commodore 64 game for that, or just a budget Amiga title. And I think that's one of the reasons why Mastertronic did not last very long in the Amiga market. I did have two Mastertronic games back in the day. Like I say, this is one. The other was a game called Space Ranger, which I reviewed ages ago. Now, I didn't mind that actually. I have no idea if I've got this plant or not. Yes, I have. So yeah, graphics are nice and nicely detailed, but the problem is there are a lot of the plants that you have to collect that are really hard to see, and that does not help things very much. So that's a big negative point as far as the graphics go, even though they do look good. As far as the audio goes, most of the game is played in silence. Like I say, unfortunately this disc image, actually I think the disc image works fine, it's the emulator that's having the problem. But yeah, basically this game is played in silence completely. That's the bloke who fires the fireballs at you if he catches you in that garden area. And that's my brother firing lightning bolts at me. I mean, I can't do anything against him because I don't have. I'm just seeing if he can finish me off and the game will be over. No, it looks like his lightning spell has run out. So anyway, yes, the sound effects in game are basically limited to the sound of the page turning in your spell book and the sound of spells being mixed and spells being cast, and that is it. Now this spell here that it's got up here, the protect spell, so the ragwort which I got there, the piperwort is the other plant that I need, and that is another one of those plants that is extremely difficult to find because it's completely green, which means it's just hidden, you know, in amongst the standard you know, background of the grass there. So I've now got the heal spell. Well, I've got the items for it. I can't cast it, and I now have Swift. So that's graphics and audio taken care of, and then the gameplay. Well, the Commodore 64 version plays much better, although it's a bit of a null point because the bugs in the Commodore 64 version render the game unplayable in general. The Spectrum version plays a lot better, although obviously it doesn't look anywhere near as good. This version is just far too fucking slow, and the Amiga version could have done scrolling because, say, the whole level is loaded into memory, so it could have scrolled and made getting around the landscape so much easier. So although I liked the game back in the day on the Spectrum and would have liked the Commodore 64 version if it had worked properly, I always found the Amiga version just far too slow, and I really didn't enjoy playing it. And surely nobody can be surprised by that. I don't mind slow-paced games, but, you know, there has to be a reason for them being, you know, not particularly quick. This is just boring, you know. So here we are at my cauldron, so I can mix the Swift spell, the zombie spell, and I think that's it. Okay, heal. Well, I'll use heal spell to heal myself. Alright, so I mix repel and invisible, but I can't mix freeze. I can't mix any attacking spells, so I can't actually do anything to fight against Leonoric yet. I don't have enough. But now if I use up any of those spells that I've made, so let's in order to try and get somewhere quickly, let's use the Swift spell, because I'm sure I did. There we go. Right, that's cast, so now we're moving quickly, and we'll see how long it lasts. There you go, so it's run out already. I can cast it again by the looks of it, which is handy. I think I can pick that again, yeah. So, right, let's Swift, right, cast again. And it's run out, and I can cast it a third time, but I'm pretty sure the third time, yep, that's the final time. So now if I either need or want to cast it again, I've got to find the Speedwell and the Mad Sage again, and then come back to the cauldron and mix it up again. So now I can cast sprites, or I can when I've got them mixed. But you know what, I'm fucking bored playing this, so what do I rate it? Not very much. I'll give it 3 out of 10. So I do like the game Feud, Spectrum version is great. Commodore 64 version could have been great if it wasn't so badly bugged. So this could have been a great game, but it's just far too slow, and that has ruined it. It had the potential and they missed the mark big time. So there you go, that is Feud for Commodore Amiga. 3 out of 10. Could have been great, but what we got really is forgettable, instantly forgettable. That brings this review to an end, and we will see you at the next one.